5 years had passed since the trial that changed the galaxy. Captain Lee Doyun, now Admiral Doyun, stood on the observation deck of the Kepler Sanctuary, watching the morning training session in the courtyard below. Zethka had grown into a magnificent young adult Vorthok, nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that shimmered like emeralds in the sunlight. But it was not his size that impressed visitors to the sanctuary. It was his gentle manner as he taught a group of mixed species youngsters about conflict resolution. Remember, Zethka was saying to his students, violence should always be the last choice, never the first. There are always other ways to solve problems if you look for them. A small human child raised her hand. But what if someone is trying to hurt your family? Zethka considered the question seriously. Then you protect them. But protection does not always mean fighting. Sometimes it means getting help. Sometimes it means talking. Sometimes it means being willing to sacrifice for others. Dr. Kim Minji joined Doyan on the observation deck, carrying a datapad filled with her latest research. She had become the galaxy's leading expert on Vorthok psychology and development. Her work studied on every coalition world. How are the integration programs going? Dojan asked. Better than we hoped, she replied, showing him charts and graphs. The 6 original cubs have all found their places in coalition society. Kethra is working as a translator at the Galactic Embassy. Velter has become a counselor helping other rescued younglings adapt to new families. Morgan joined the coalition, Science Corps, and Sector. He is training to become a peace negotiator. Apparently having a Vorthok speak for peaceful solutions carries a lot of weight in difficult situations. It was true. The sight of young adult Vorthok choosing cooperation over conflict had forced the entire galaxy to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the species. The trial 5 years ago had been broadcast across every coalition world, showing billions of beings the moment when 6 cubs knelt peacefully before their would-be executioner. The Tribune's decision was the right one, Doyan said. The coalition. Tribune had spent 3 days deliberating after witnessing the cubs' behavior. In the end, they had reached an unprecedented conclusion. The cubs would be allowed to live. But under careful supervision and with mandatory integration into coalition society. It was a decision that split the galaxy, with some calling it madness and others calling it justice. Inquisitor Thalmos had resigned in protest and disappeared into the Outer Rim. His soldiers, however, had requested reassignment to the new Vorthok integration program. Seeing the cubs' peaceful surrender had changed their perspective completely. Any word from our wandering ambassador? Doyan asked. Minji smiled. Zethka sent a message yesterday. The peace negotiations on Rigel 7 are going well. Both sides have agreed to a temporary ceasefire while he mediates. It was hard to believe that the same species that had once terrorized the galaxy was now producing some of its most effective peacekeepers. But Zethka and his siblings had proven that environment mattered more than genetics. Raised with love and taught the value of life, they had grown into beings that honored both their Vorthok heritage and their adopted coalition values. The new arrivals are settling in well, Engineer Park Jisoo said, joining them on the deck. 3 more cubs were found on the Rim worlds. Pirates had been hiding them for almost a year. How old? Minji asked. Young enough to adapt quickly. The oldest is maybe 6 months. They are already beginning to bond with their caretakers. The Kepler Sanctuary had grown far beyond its original purpose. What had started as a hiding place for 6 rescued cubs had become a research center, training facility, and symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. Species that had been enemies for generations were learning to work together, united by their shared commitment to protecting the innocent. Through the observation deck windows, they could see the memorial garden that Zethka had insisted on creating. Stones marked the graves of every known Vorthok who had died in the final war, including his father Kethfer. It was a place of remembrance, but also of hope for the future. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you had not made that choice, Mingi said to Doyan. If you had followed orders and left that dying warrior to face his end alone? I try not to think about it, Doyan replied. The galaxy is a better place because we chose compassion over fear. A gentle chime indicated an incoming message. Communications. Officer Choi Woo-bin appeared on the communication screen, calling from the sanctuary's control center. Admiral, we have a priority message from the Coalition Council. They want to expand the integration program to include other former enemy species. They're asking if the sanctuary can accommodate the project. Doyen looked at Minji, who nodded thoughtfully. Tell them we will consider it. But our first priority remains the Vorthok cubs. Still have 12 more younglings in the program. Understood, sir. As the communication ended, they heard laughter from the courtyard below. Zethka was playing a gentle game with his students, using his natural agility to dodge their attempts to tag him, while being careful not to accidentally harm them with his size and strength. He never forgets he is different, Minji observed. But he has learned to see that difference as a gift rather than a curse. The galaxy has learned the same lesson, Doyen said. Diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. A small voice behind them made them turn. One of the newest cubs, a tiny female with silver scales, had somehow made her way up to the observation deck. Shh! She looked up at Minji with large, curious eyes. Dr. Minji, she said in careful galactic common. When will Zira be big like Zethka? A few years, little one, Minji replied, kneeling down to the cub's level. But remember, being big is not as important as being kind. Zira wants to help people like Zethka does. Then you will. If you learn well and grow strong and choose to use your gifts to help others, you can make the galaxy a better place. The little cub beamed and scurried back toward the main building, probably to share this news with her new siblings. As the twin suns of the Kepler system began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Admiral Dojan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with one dying warrior's desperate plea to save his child. It had grown into a movement that challenged the very foundation of galactic politics. Do you think we have really changed things? He asked. Or just delayed the inevitable? Look at down there, Minji said, pointing to the courtyard where species that had been mortal enemies just a few years ago were working together to prepare the evening meal. Look at our cubs who grew up knowing that their strength should be used to protect rather than destroy. Look at the thousands of families across the galaxy who have opened their hearts to former enemies. She paused, watching as Zethka helped an elderly Centauri researcher who had stumbled on the pathway. We have not just changed things, she continued. We have proven that change is possible, that love is stronger than hate. The choice to see potential good in others, even our enemies, can transform the universe itself. As night fell over the sanctuary, lights came on in the various buildings where beings from dozens of species lived and worked together in harmony. In the nursery building, young cubs of various races slept safely under the protection of caretakers, who had once been strangers but were now family. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Zethka was using the lessons he had learned from his human mother and his extended galactic family to help others find peaceful solutions to their conflicts. The galaxy was still not perfect. There were still those who harbored old hatreds, still conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve. But the Kepler Sanctuary stood as proof that even the most unlikely bonds could grow into something beautiful and strong. In the end, it had not been superior weapons or military might that had won the peace. It had been the simple, human decision to see a frightened child instead of a future monster, and to choose love over fear. The predator's cub had indeed been cradled by the one species no one expected, and in that cradling, both species had found something they never knew they were missing. A family that transcended the boundaries of biology and reached across the stars to embrace all. Who chose compassion over conquest. The war was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere in the memorial garden, a stone marker bore a simple inscription in both Vorthok script and galactic common. Here lies Kethver, warrior and father, who trusted his greatest enemy with his most precious gift. His legacy lives not in conquest, but in the choice his son made to build rather than destroy. Below that, in smaller text, were the words that had become the motto of the Kepler Sanctuary. From the ashes of war, love finds a way. 3 days had passed since Jinho found the creature in the crashed pod. He had moved it to an abandoned mining tunnel deep in the mountains, far from the colony's main operations. The tunnel was warm and dry, and most importantly, hidden. Ginho visited twice each day, bringing food, water, and medical supplies. The creature was getting stronger. Its broken legs were healing faster than any human bones could heal. The glowing patterns on its skin had changed from the dim blue of pain to brighter colors that seemed to shift with its mood. The creature watched Jinho carefully during each visit. It had learned to recognize the sound of his footsteps and would make soft musical sounds when he arrived. Jinho had started calling it Kyung, though he had no idea if the creature had a real name. On the fourth day, Jinho brought paper and pencils along with the usual supplies. He wanted to try communicating with Kyun beyond simple gestures. The creature showed immediate interest in the writing materials. Holding them carefully with its four hands, Ginho drew simple pictures first. A circle for the sun, wavy lines. For water, stick figures for humans. Kyung watched intently, its 6 eyes focusing on each drawing. Then something amazing happened. Kyung took the pencil and began to draw. The creature's first drawing was crude but clear. It showed a round object in space covered with what looked like cities or structures. Jinho realized he was looking at a planet, probably Kung's home world. The creature pointed at the drawing, then at itself, making those soft, musical sounds. Jinho nodded and drew Earth, showing Kyung his own home planet. The creature studied the drawing carefully, then made a sound that might have been understanding. It drew another picture, this one showing the same planet as before, but now it was dark and broken. Lines of destruction cut across the surface. Kung's skin patterns flashed red and orange as it drew.
Oh.
Ginho could see that remembering this was painful for the creature. But Kyun kept drawing, as if it needed to tell this story. The next drawing showed creatures that made Jinho's blood run cold. They were massive, shapeless things that seemed to flow like liquid shadow, had no clear form, just reaching tentacles and what might have been mouths full of sharp teeth. These creatures were surrounding the broken planet. Kyung pointed at these shadow beings and made harsh, frightened sounds. Its skin patterns flashed bright red, the color of danger and fear. Jinho understood. These shadow creatures had destroyed Kyun's world. But the story was not over. Kyun drew more pictures, showing its own people fleeing in ships. The creatures Kyun drew looked like itself, with the same bone-white skin and multiple eyes. Were running from the shadow beings scattered across the galaxy. Jinho felt sick as he understood what Kyung was showing him. This was not just the destruction of one world. This was genocide. An entire species had been driven from their home by something terrible. Kyung drew picture after picture, each one showing the same story. The shadow beings, which Jinho started thinking of as devourers, followed Kyung's people across space. Every time the refugees tried to settle somewhere new, the devourers found them. Every time they tried to warn other species about the danger, they were driven away. One drawing showed Kyung's people approaching what looked like a space station. The other aliens in the picture were running away in fear. Jinho realized that Kyung's people looked scary to others. It's just like Kyung had looked scary to him at first. Another drawing showed Kyung's people trying to fight the devourers. But the shadow beings were too strong, too many. The refugees kept running, kept trying to warn others, but no one would listen. The most heartbreaking drawing showed Kyun alone in the escape pod. Other members of its species were in the background, turning away. Jung-ho understood that Kyung had been cast out, abandoned by its own people. Maybe it was too weak to keep fighting. Maybe it was too tired to keep running. Kyung set down the pencil and looked at Jinho with all 6 eyes. The creature's skin patterns had changed to deep purple, a color Jinho had not seen before. It seemed to be the color of sadness and loneliness. Jinho reached out slowly and touched Kyung's arm, the same way the creature had touched him that first night. Kyung's skin felt warm now, not cold like metal. The creature made soft sounds, and its patterns shifted to a gentle green. Jinho understood now why he had found Kyung alone and dying. This was not some monster or invader. This was a refugee, the last survivor of a tragedy beyond imagination. Kyung's people had been trying to save the galaxy from the Devourers, but no one had been willing to listen. The next day, Kyung brought more paper and asked Kyung to draw the Devourers again. This time, he wanted to understand what they were and how they could be stopped. Kyung's drawings showed that the shadow beings fed on life energy itself. They would drain entire planets, leaving nothing behind but empty rocks floating in space. But Kyung also drew something hopeful. The creature showed Ginho that the Devourers had weaknesses. They could be hurt by certain kinds of energy, specific sounds and vibrations. Kyung's people had learned how to fight them, but only a little. They were never strong enough to win, only to run. Ginho studied these drawings carefully. He was starting to understand something important. Kyung's people were not just refugees. They were the galaxy's first line of defense against something that could destroy everything. And they had been fighting this war alone for thousands of years. That night, Ginho lay awake thinking about what he had learned. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were still hunting. They had probably followed Kyung's escape pod, which meant they might be coming to this system. The human colonies had no idea what was heading their way. Ginho also thought about Kyung, alone in the mining tunnel. The creature had shared its people's greatest secrets with him. It had trusted him with the knowledge of an ancient war that the rest of the galaxy did not even know existed. When Ginho visited the next morning, he brought something new. He had drawn pictures of his own, showing human cities and ships. But these were not just any pictures. They showed humans and creatures. Like Kyung working together, fighting side by side against the shadow beings, Kyung looked at these drawings for a long time. Its skin patterns cycled through many colors. Finally, they settled on bright gold, a color Ginho had never seen before. Kyung touched the drawings gently, then looked at Ginho with something that might have been hope. For the first time in thousands of years, one of Kyung's people was not alone in the fight against the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. 2 weeks had passed since Ginho first found Kyung in the crashed pod. The creature was now fully healed and much stronger. Its skin patterns had become brighter and more varied, showing emotions that Ginho was learning to read like a new language. Ginho had started bringing his meals to the tunnel so they could eat together. Kyung could not eat human food, but it seemed to enjoy the company. The creature would make soft sounds while Ginho ate, almost like it was talking about its day. During these shared meals, Ginho taught Gin simple human words. The creature was surprisingly good at learning language. Its voice was musical and strange, but Ginho could understand most of what it tried to say. Ginho Kyung said one day, pointing at its human friend. The name sounded different in Kyung's voice, but it was clearly recognizable. Yes, that's me, Ginho replied with a smile. And you are Kyung. The creature's skin patterns flashed bright gold. Ginho had learned that this meant happiness or approval. Kyung was pleased to have a name and to be able to use Jinho's name, but their peaceful routine was about to be disrupted. Back at the mining colony, people were starting to notice Jinho's strange behavior. He was taking longer breaks, disappearing for hours at a time, and his work productivity had dropped. Dong-Min, the chief mining engineer, was the first to become suspicious. He noticed that Ginho was taking medical supplies and food that were not accounted for in the colony's records. When Dong-Min asked about it, Ginho gave vague answers about equipment maintenance in the outer sectors. Something is not right, Dong-Min told his assistant. Ginho has been acting strange for weeks. He goes to the mountains every day, but there are no scheduled operations there. The assistant nodded. I have seen him carrying food and supplies. Maybe he is hiding something. Dong-Min decided to follow Ginho on his next trip to the mountains. He stayed far behind, using his scanner to track Jinho's movements. The readings led him to an area near the old mining tunnels that had been abandoned years ago. But Dong-Min was not the only one who had noticed Jinho's behavior. Sujin, the colony's security chief, had been receiving reports of strange energy readings from the mountain region. The readings were unlike anything in the colony's database. These energy signatures are not human, Sujin told her team. They appear and disappear at regular intervals, always in the same area. Someone needs to investigate. Meanwhile, Ginho was unaware that he was being watched. He continued his daily visits to Kyung, bringing news from the colony and learning more about the creature's people and their long war against the Devourers. Kyung had started sharing more advanced knowledge with Ginho. The creature showed him drawings of star maps, energy patterns, and technologies that were far beyond human understanding. Jinho realized that Kyung's people had science and engineering skills that could advance human civilization by centuries. "Your people very smart," Jinho said one day, looking at Kyung's drawings of energy systems. "We learn much from running," Kyung replied sadly. "Always running, always learning new ways to hide and fight." Jinho felt sorry for Kunyon and all of its people. They had spent thousands of years as refugees, never able to rest or build a proper civilization. All their knowledge came from desperation and survival, but their conversations were interrupted. When the tunnel's entrance was blocked by a rock slide, Jinho had been inside when it happened, and now he was trapped with Kyung deep underground. The main tunnel was sealed, and the emergency exit was too small for them to escape through. "We stuck," Jinho said, looking at the blocked entrance. Kyung's skin patterns flashed red with concern. The creature moved to the rock slide and began examining it carefully. Then something amazing happened. Kyung's hands began to glow with the same blue light as its skin patterns. Jinho watched in amazement as Kyung touched the rocks. Wherever the creature's glowing hands made contact, the stones began to dissolve. Not melt or break apart, but actually dissolve into nothing. Within minutes, Kyung had cleared a path through the rock slide. "How you do that?" Jinho asked, staring at the cleared tunnel. "Energy change," Kyung explained as best it could in simple words. "Make rock become not rock." Ginho realized he had just witnessed technology that was completely beyond human understanding. Kyung could manipulate matter at a basic level, changing its structure with focused energy. This was the kind of advanced science that Kyung's people had developed during their long exile. But their escape had not gone unnoticed. The energy discharge from Kyung's matter manipulation had been detected by the colony's sensors. Sujin received an alert about a massive energy spike from the mountain region. "That reading is off the charts," Sujin said to her team. "Whatever is out there just used enough energy to power the entire colony for a week." At the same time, Dongmin had been watching the tunnel entrance when the rock slide occurred. He saw the strange blue light coming from inside the tunnel and heard sounds that were definitely not human. When Jinho and something else emerged from the tunnel, Dongmin got the shock of his life. He watched through his scanner as Jinho walked beside the most terrifying creature he had ever seen. The thing was huge, covered in white armor with multiple eyes and claws that could cut through metal. But what scared Dongmin most was how comfortable Jinho seemed around it. Dong-Min activated his emergency communicator. "This is Dongmin to colony control. We have a situation. Ginho has made contact with an unknown alien species. The creature appears to be hostile." The message reached Sujin within minutes. She immediately assembled her security team and prepared to head to the mountains. According to Dongmin's report, Jinho was in serious danger. But Jinho was not in danger. He was walking back to the colony with Kyun, who had insisted on helping him return safely. The creature's knowledge of the mountain paths was much better than Jinho's, and it could sense danger from unstable rocks or gas pockets. "You not have to come," Ginho told Kyung as they walked. "People will be scared." "Ginho friend," Kyung replied simply. "Friends help friends." Jinho smiled at this. In just 2 weeks, he had formed a stronger friendship with this alien creature than he had with most humans he had known for years. Kyung was loyal, kind, and incredibly intelligent. The creature's appearance was scary, but its heart was gentle. They were almost at the colony when they saw the lights of security vehicles approaching. Sujin and her team were armed and ready for trouble. They had come expecting to rescue Jinho from a dangerous alien. Instead, they found Jinho walking calmly beside the most terrifying creature any of them had ever seen. The alien's skin was glowing with various colors. Its 6 eyes were scanning the approaching humans with obvious intelligence. "Ginho, get away from that thing," Sujin shouted, raising her weapon. But Ginho stepped in front of Kyun, protecting the creature with his own body. "Stop. Don't hurt it." The security team was confused. Ginho was clearly not being held prisoner. He was protecting the alien from them. Kyung saw the weapons pointed at it, and at Ginho. The creature's skin patterns flashed the bright red of danger. But instead of fighting or running, Kyung did something that no one expected. The creature slowly lowered itself to the ground, making itself as small as possible. It placed all 4 of its hands on the ground in a gesture of complete submission. Most importantly, it positioned itself so that all the weapons were pointed at it instead of at Ginho. "No hurt, Ginho," Kyung said in its musical voice. "Kyung bad, Ginho good." The security team stared in amazement. The creature was protecting Ginho, just as Ginho was protecting it. This was not the behavior of a dangerous monster. This was the behavior of a friend. The security team stood frozen. Weapons still pointed at Kyung. The creature remained on the ground, completely still, protecting Ginho with its own body. No one knew what to do next. "Don't shoot," Ginho said quietly. "Please, it's not dangerous." Sujin kept her weapon steady, but did not fire. "Ginho, step away from that thing slowly. We don't know what it is capable of." "I know exactly what it is capable of," Ginho replied. "It saved my life today. It cleared a rock slide with its bare hands to get me out of a collapsed tunnel." The security team exchanged worried looks. If the creature could clear rock slides, it was incredibly powerful. That made it even more dangerous. "It's been hiding in the mountains for 2 weeks, Dongmin said, approaching the group. "Jinho has been taking supplies to it. Food, medicine, everything. Is this true?" Sujin asked Jinho. Jinho nodded. "Its name is Kyung. It was hurt when I found it. I helped it heal." "And now it's attached to you," Sujin said. "These aliens can be unpredictable. It might turn violent if we try to separate you." Before Jinho could respond, alarms began blaring from the colony. The sound echoed across the mountains, a warning that something was seriously wrong. Everyone turned toward the colony lights in the distance. Sujin's communicator crackled too. "Life. Security Chief. We have an emergency. Unknown ships are approaching the system. They're huge and they're not responding to our signals." "How many ships?" Sujin asked. "We don't know. Our sensors can't get a clear count. They're interfering with our equipment just by being here." Kyung suddenly stood up, its skin patterns flashing bright red. The creature made harsh sounds and pointed at the sky. Even without words, everyone could tell that Kyung was terrified. "What is it?" Ginho asked. "What's wrong?" Kyung grabbed Ginho's arm gently and began drawing in the dirt with one of its claws. The drawing showed the same shadow creatures from its earlier pictures, the Devourers. But this time, they were surrounding a planet that looked like the mining colony's world. "They found us," Kyung said in its musical voice. "They follow me." Here, Jinho felt sick. He understood now why Kyung was so scared. The creatures that had destroyed Kyung's world were coming here. They had tracked the escape pod across space. "We need to get back to the colony," Sujin said, lowering her weapon. "If those ships are hostile, we need to evacuate." The group ran toward the colony, Kyung keeping pace easily with its long legs. The creature's skin patterns kept flashing different colors as it scanned the sky. It was using senses that humans did not have, trying to detect the approaching danger. They reached the colony. They found chaos. Governor Taeho was in the command center, talking frantically with the other human colonies in the system. The approaching ships were massive, larger than anything humans had ever built. "They're not like any ships in our database," the sensor operator reported. "They seem to be alive. They're pulsing like heartbeats. Are they trying to communicate?" Taeho asked. "No, sir. They're just getting closer. And, sir, there's something else. Hey, our people are getting sick." Anyone who looks at the ships on the screen starts feeling weak and dizzy. Kyung pushed past the security team and approached the main screen. The creature looked at the images of the approaching ships and made a sound like a scream. Skin patterns flashed so bright that several people had to look away. "Those are them," Jinho said quietly. "The things that destroyed Kyung's world?" Governor Taeho stared at Jinho. "What are you talking about? And what is that thing?" Mrs. Kyung, Jinho said. "It's not from around here. These people have been fighting those ships for thousands of years." "Fighting them?" Taeho asked. Can they be defeated? Kyung approached the governor slowly. Even though Taho was clearly afraid, the creature knelt down to make itself less threatening. It began drawing on the floor with its claw, showing the same pictures it had shown Jinho. The drawings told the story of the Devourers, how they consumed entire worlds, how they had driven Kyun's people across the galaxy. But most importantly, Kyun drew pictures showing how they could be fought. They feed on life energy, Ginho explained as Kyun drew. But they can be hurt by specific sounds and energy patterns. Kyun's people learned how to fight them, but they were never strong enough to win. How long do we have? Taeho asked. The sensor operator checked his equipment. At their current speed, they'll reach us in 6 hours, maybe less. Can we evacuate? Someone asked. The evacuation ships are 2 days away, Taeho said grimly. We can't run. Kyung stood up and pointed at the mining equipment displays on the walls. The creature made excited sounds and began drawing again. This time, it showed the mining station's heavy machinery connected to some kind of energy system. What's it trying to say? Taeho asked. Jinho studied the drawings. I think it's saying we can use our equipment to fight them. Our mining lasers and sonic drills might be able to hurt these Devourers. But how? Sujin asked. I don't know how to configure the equipment for combat. Hyung looked at Jinho, and then at the governor. The creature's skin patterns shifted to deep purple, the color of sadness. It understood that these humans were in danger because of it. The Devourers had followed its escape pod here. Kyung, help, the creature said clearly. Kyung, show humans how to fight. Can we trust it? Taeho asked Jinho. Jinho looked at Kyung. Remembering everything they had shared over the past 2 weeks, the creature had saved his life, protected him from danger, and now it was offering to help save the entire colony. Yes, Jinho said. We can trust it. Taeho made a decision that would change everything. All right, we'll work with the alien. But if this is some kind of trap, we're all dead anyway. Kyung's skin patterns flashed bright gold. For the first time in thousands of years, someone was willing to fight alongside one of its people against the Devourers. The creature began working immediately, showing the humans how to modify their equipment. But outside, the shadow ships were getting closer. The very air around the colony was starting to feel wrong, heavy and cold. Some of the colonists were already getting sick just from being near the approaching fleet. The battle for the colony's survival was about to begin, and they had less than 6 hours to prepare. The colony worked frantically to prepare for the coming battle. Kyung moved between the different workstations, showing humans how to modify their mining equipment into weapons. The creature's knowledge was incredible, but the work was dangerous. Wu Jin, the chief engineer, was amazed by what Kyung was teaching them. These modifications should be impossible. The energy levels required would destroy our equipment. But Kyung showed him how to use harmonic frequencies to amplify the power without burning out the systems. The creature's hands glowed as it demonstrated, making precise adjustments to the machinery that human tools could not achieve. The Devourers feed on life energy, Kyung explained, as it worked. But certain sounds hurt them, make them weak. Mining stations' sonic drills were being converted into massive sound weapons. The laser-cutting tools were being modified to produce energy beams that could disrupt the Devourers' feeding process. Every piece of heavy machinery was being turned into a weapon. But the most dangerous modification was happening in the main power center. Young needed to connect directly to the colony's energy grid to coordinate all the weapons. The process would require the creature to channel massive amounts of electricity through its own body. This could kill you, Jinho said, watching Kyung prepare the connection cables. Maybe, Kyung replied. But if Kyung not do this, Devourers kill everyone. Yuna, the colony's medical officer, had been monitoring Kyung's health during the preparations. The creature was already weak from its earlier injuries and the stress of the approaching battle. Connecting to the power grid in its current condition was extremely dangerous. There has to be another way, Yuna said. Your body can't handle this much energy. But Kyun shook its head. Only Kyun people know how to make the sounds. Humans not able to do this. As they worked, the effects of the approaching Devourer fleet became more obvious. The sky had turned an unnatural dark color, even though it was still daytime. The air felt thick and hard to breathe. Many of the colonists were getting sick, complaining of headaches and weakness. "They're draining us already," Tejo said, watching the medical reports, and they're still hours away. The sensor readings were getting worse. The Devourer ships were not just approaching, they were spreading out around the entire system. There would be no escape, even if evacuation ships arrived. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving messages from the other colonies in the system. They're asking for help." "What kind of help?" Tejo asked.
They want to
"Send ships to fight alongside us. They've been monitoring our emergency transmissions." Tejo was amazed. "They want to come here?" "Toward the danger." The communications officer nodded. "Admiral Hyan Wu from the Defense Fleet says they're not going to abandon us. They're bringing every ship they can spare." Kyung's skin patterns flashed bright gold when it heard this news. The creature had never seen different groups of people coming together to help each other. Its own people had been scattered and alone for so long that they had forgotten how to work together. "Humans very brave," Kyung said to Jinho. "Other people run from devourers. Humans come to fight." "That's what we do," Jinho replied. "We help each other." The first human ships arrived 3 hours before the devourers reached the colony. They were mostly civilian vessels, mining ships, and cargo haulers that had been quickly armed with whatever weapons could be found. "Admiral!" To fight. Admiral Hyan Wu contacted the colony directly. "We have 47 ships ready for battle. What are your orders?" Tejo looked at Kyung, who was now connected to the power grid by dozens of cables. The creature's entire body was glowing with energy, and it was clearly in pain. But it was also coordinating all the defense preparations. "The alien is our tactical coordinator," Tejo explained to the Admiral. "It knows how to fight these things." "We're taking orders from an alien?" Hyan Wu asked. "We're taking orders from the only being in the galaxy that knows how to kill these monsters," Tejo replied. Kyun began transmitting coordinates to the human ships, showing them where to position themselves around the colony. The creature's knowledge of three-dimensional space combat was far beyond anything humans had developed. But as the Devourer fleet finally arrived, everyone understood how hopeless their situation really was. The enemy ships were enormous, dark, masses that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved like living things, pulsing and shifting as they surrounded the human forces. "How many of them are there?" someone asked. "Sensors can't count them," the operator replied. "They're interfering with our equipment." But there are dozens of large ships and hundreds of smaller ones. The battle began when the first Devourer ship extended what looked like tentacles toward the colony. These were not weapons, but feeding tubes, designed to drain the life energy from the entire planet. Kyun screamed and channeled massive amounts of energy through the modified mining equipment. The sonic weapons fired in perfect harmony, creating sound waves that made the Devourer's ships recoil. The laser systems fired coordinated beams that disrupted the feeding process. The human ships followed Kyun's coordinated attack plan, striking at the Devourers from multiple angles. But for every enemy ship they damaged, 2 more seemed to take its place. "We're not winning," Admiral Hyan Wu reported. "We're just making them angry." Kung's condition was getting worse. The creature's skin was now burning bright white from the energy overload. Jinho could see that his friend was dying, using up its own life force to power the defense systems. "You have to stop," Jinho said. "This is killing you, not stop." Hyung replied weakly. "Humans, good people. Hyung save. Humans." The battle reached its climax when the largest Devourer ship, something the size of a small moon, approached the colony's sun. The creature began draining energy directly from the star, causing solar flares that threatened to destroy everything. In the system, Kyung made a final, desperate decision. The creature disconnected from the power grid and began channeling all of its remaining life energy into one massive, harmonic burst. The sound it created was unlike anything that had ever been. Heard in the galaxy, the harmonic wave spread out from the colony at the speed of light, hitting every Devourer's ship simultaneously. The effect was devastating. The shadow creatures screamed and writhed as their feeding systems were disrupted. The largest ship released its grip on the sun and began to tear itself apart. But the effort was too much for Kyung. The creature collapsed, its skin patterns fading to dim gray. Ho caught his friend as it fell, cradling the alien's head in his lap. "Kyung, stay with me," Ho said. "The battle is over. You won." Kyung's eyes focused on Ho with difficulty. "Humans safe?" "Nice," Ho replied, tears streaming down his face. "Humans are safe. You saved us all." Around them, the Devourer fleet was in chaos. Ships were exploding or fleeing back into deep space. The ancient terror that had plagued the galaxy for millennia was finally defeated. But the victory had cost everything. Kung's life signs were fading rapidly, and there was nothing human medicine could do to save a being whose entire physiology was based on energy manipulation. Ho sat beside Kyung's bed in the colony's medical center. The creature had been unconscious for 3 days after the battle. Its skin was pale gray, and its breathing was so shallow that the monitors could barely detect it. Yuna had done everything she could with human medicine, but Kyung's biology was too different. The creature's energy systems had been completely drained by the final attack on the Devourers. It was barely alive. "The energy readings are almost zero," Yuna reported quietly. "I don't think it's going to survive much longer." Ho held Kyung's hand, feeling how cold it had become. "You can't die now. You saved everyone. You're a hero." For 3 days, Ho had not left Kung's side. He talked to the unconscious creature, telling it about the victory, about how the entire galaxy was celebrating the defeat of the Devourers. But Kyung showed no signs of waking up. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The colonies. Long-range sensors detected ships approaching the system. But these were not human ships, and they were not Devourers. "They're sending peaceful signals," the communications officer reported to Governor Taeho. "And sir, they're asking specifically about the individual who defeated the Devourers." The ships that arrived were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were beautiful, flowing designs that seemed to be made of the same white material as Kung's skin. As they approached the colony, they transmitted messages in the same musical language that Kung spoke. "We don't understand what they're saying," the translator said, "but they keep repeating one word that sounds like Kyung." Ho was called to the communications center. When he heard the transmissions, he recognized some of the words from his conversations with Kung. These were more of Kung's people, and they were looking for their lost family member. The lead ship requested permission to land near the medical center. From it emerged beings that looked like Kyung, but older, with more complex patterns on their skin. The one who appeared to be their leader approached Ho with obvious respect. "You're the human who saved our young one," the leader said in careful but clear human language. "I am Daehain, elder of the Vorthok people." "Kyung is dying," Ho said immediately. "We tried to help, but we don't know how to treat your people." Daehain's skin patterns flashed with concern. "Take us to Kyung immediately." In the medical center, the Vorthok elders surrounded Kyung's bed. They placed their hands on the unconscious creature and began to glow with the same energy that Kyung had used in battle. Ho watched in amazement as color slowly returned to Kyung's skin. "Energy shared among our people," Daehain explained. "We give Kyung our life force. Make strong again." The healing process took hours, but gradually Kyung's breathing became stronger. Its skin patterns began to pulse with faint color. Finally, its eyes opened and focused on Ho. "Ho," Kyung said weakly. "You here?" "I'm here," Ho replied, smiling through his tears. "Your people came to help you." Kyung looked around at the other Vorthok with surprise. "Family came?" "Ak!" "Heard the harmony song across the galaxy," Daehain said. "The song that defeated the Devourers. We knew it could only come from one of our people. We came to find who had done this impossible thing." "Not impossible," Kyung said. "Humans helped. Humans brave." Over the following days, more Vorthok ships arrived. The entire surviving population of their species, less than 100 individuals, came to the human colony. They had been scattered across the galaxy for thousands of years, but Kung's victory had given them hope for the first time in millennia. The Vorthok were amazed by what they found. Humans had not only accepted one of their people, but but had fought alongside it against the Devourers. This was something that had never happened before. In their long history, other species always fear us, Dehan told Governor Tejo. Our appearance frightens them. They drive us away before we can explain about the Devourers. Humans judge by actions, not appearance, Tejo replied. Kyung saved our lives. That makes it family. The Vorthok decided to stay near the human colony. For the first time in thousands of years, they had found a place where they were welcome. They began sharing their advanced knowledge with the humans, teaching them about energy manipulation, space travel, and technologies that were centuries ahead of human science. Jinho was appointed as the first human ambassador to the Vorthok people. He worked with Kung to establish communication and trade agreements between the two species. The friendship that had started in an abandoned mining tunnel was now the foundation for an alliance between civilizations. 6 months after the battle, the first permanent Vorthok settlement was established on a nearby planet. But many of the Vorthok chose to live alongside humans, working together on joint projects and research. The galaxy was still adjusting to the news that the Devourers had been defeated. Many species were afraid to believe it at first, but as months passed without any attacks, hope began to spread. The ancient terror was finally gone. Jin-Ho often visited the memorial that had been built at the site, where he first found Kyun's crashed pod. It was a simple monument, but it represented something important. It was the place where fear had been replaced by friendship, where two very different species had learned to trust each other. Hard to believe it all started here, Jinho said to Kyun as they stood beside the memorial. Not started here, Kyun replied, its skin patterns glowing warm gold. Started when Jinho chose to help instead of run away? That choice changed everything. Jinho smiled. I guess humans are just too stubborn to be afraid of something that needs help. That why Vorthok people love humans? Kyung said. Humans see past fear to find hope? As they watched the sunset over the mining colony, Jinho reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was no longer threatened by the Devourers. Two species that had been alone were now working together. Somewhere in the distance, human and Vorthok children were playing together, learning each other's languages and customs. The feared creatures of the galaxy had found a home at last, and humanity had gained allies who would help them explore the stars. It was, Jinho thought, exactly the kind of ending that Kyun's long journey deserved. The story of the human who took in a monster and discovered a friend had become legend throughout the galaxy. But for Jinho and Kyung, it was just the beginning of a friendship that would last for the rest of their lives.